welcome to our second of 7 Cultivators Community Blitz events. I'm Jeff Montague. I'm the community manager for the Cultivators Community, which is a place where change makers, culture champions, and people who challenge the status quo come together to help each other bring their ideas to life. Before we get into today's event, obviously we have some shameless self-promotion, and that is that this event is brought to you by Unbury. It's a community intelligence engine that helps you clearly understand your community health and engagement metrics. For example, you may have seen on the first slide there that the Unbury engagement ladder will show your community members charted out based on their level of engagement, from new members to inactive members to curious to engaged and all the way up to advocate status. And if you want to learn more, obviously go to cultivateall.com/unbury. Now that we have paid our bills with our commercial, let's go ahead and see what we have in store today. We actually have Amanda Petersen, who has consulted with countless organizations from enterprise level to small businesses on how to set up and grow communities of all types. She's now one of the community managers at Mural, which is the platform we're all going to be using today. So with that, Amanda, I'm going to turn this entire event over to you so you can teach us how to think about the leaders in our community.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I am going to summon us over. We've got 20 people in our Zoom chat, and we've got 12 users in our Mural. So the first thing that I want us to do is I want you to go into the image library or go onto Google. We're going to take about 2 minutes here and pick images of people who you think are leaders or actions that you think are leaderly. Okay. So Jeff, if you want to add some music in here, I'm going to set our timer.
Music.
Let's talk about this a little bit. So when we're thinking about these leaders, what is a quality that all of these leaders have in common?
They're already leaders.
They're already leaders. Okay, so right next to our little block here, there's a what do these leaders have in common? If we click on that, Anastasia, I think that was you. They're already leaders.
Okay, we can right click and add a sticky note.
Yeah, right click and add a sticky note. Jump out here. If you're a verbal processor, I'll take notes if someone wants to talk. So for people who are listening, we've got the commander from Battlestar Galactica. We've got Nelson Mandela. We've got McGonagall from Harry Potter, Angela Merkel. We've got a cute little girl wearing the future leader. She's a cute little black girl with a future leader shirt on her. We've got SpongeBob caring for Squidward. They're already leaders. What else about these people? They're in a position of authority. Oh. They're visionaries. They're inspiring. Okay. Humble, recognizable. We see who these people are in the front. Yes, absolutely. So when we're thinking about this definition of leadership, what we're seeing is we're seeing the people at the front of the room. We're seeing people who are in positions of authority or things that we think are important. We are looking for people who can give us a vision, right? Because a lot of times when we're looking for leadership, it's because we're not certain which way to go and we don't feel safe enough to make a choice, right? And these leaders are the people that we look to kind of set that. So we want to make sure that these are people who are kind of shining the light on different perspectives, that they're diverse. Like this is particularly important as we know we live in a diverse world, right? But these leaders are people who we are trusting to make change and to be those change makers. So we know where they stand, we know what their values are, and we're drawn to them, right? One of these in here is talking about they're a motivational speaker. A lot of times the people that we think about as being leaders are charismatic. They're good at talking. They're good at being in front of people. And what I want us to think about today is I want us to think about this a little bit differently, right? So if we look at this traits of a good leader here, I just threw it up on our board. And let's see if we can.
We're chasing it.
Yeah, everybody chase
Make
this.
it bigger.
Make it bigger.
Yeah.
Is that bigger? Big
Yeah,
enough?
that's better.
I'm just
Yeah.
going to throw it in front of all of our work. I'll reorganize it while you guys are doing the next activity. But look at this. Like, we want them to be self-motivated. They need to be humble. They need to care for others. They need to have self-awareness. They need to be emotionally intelligent and have great self-discipline. This is like a wish list of being a good person, right? So one of the things that we know about leaders is a lot of times our definition limits us and we cannot find them because we're not looking in the right spots. So what we want to do is think about this a little bit differently. So I'm gonna do some story time here. Does everybody know who Kermit the Frog is?
Yes.
Yep, I've heard of him.
Rabbit.
Heard of him?
Rabbit.
Ribbit. Yes, that's right. So here is Kermit the Frog, and Kermit the Frog has a dream, y'all. And this is probably the most amount of talking that I'm going to do in this session. And this dream is that Kermit says, I want to go to Hollywood and I want to get rich and famous. Okay. And so I want to have a show. So if you think about Kermit over here and you think about all of those leaders that we put over here, these guys, Kermit has a lot in common, right? Like when you think about the Muppets, you think about Kermit the Frog. You don't think about the other Muppets as much because Kermit is the leader. But if we think about what Kermit wants to do, Kermit cannot do this on his own, right? So Kermit has all of these other people that are surrounding him to help him make this happen. And when we think about reframing what a leader is, one of the things we have to know is it's not just Kermit. Kermit cannot be a change maker unless Kermit surrounds himself with more than just Kermit the Frog as the leader. One of the first people that Kermit meets on his journey to the great city of Hollywood is Fossee, right? Fossee here meets Kermit in a dive bar called El Slizo and is like, Kermit, what are we doing? And Kermit's like, I'm going to Hollywood. You should come with me. And he attracts Fossee, and Fossee becomes his cheerleader and becomes the first follower, which is super important in finding critical mass. The first follower is also a leader because they are making the world a safer place. They are making what Kermit is doing attractive and wonderful. So this person is cheerleading, this person is recruiting people, this person is making this place feel safe, and starts building up all of these amazing things that are going to happen in this amazing group of people. So we've got Gonzo, we've got Camilla who are coming in, and Fossee is enthusiastic. He makes jokes. He tries to solve problems, but doesn't always do it really well, right? And Fossee is coming along and is like, yeah, this is great. And so Fossee starts attracting people. Then they still have to get to Hollywood. So they end up, that's a very complicated story, but I watched it again last night to make sure I was telling it correctly. They meet Dr. Teeth, and Dr. Teeth is like, oh, that's really cool that you're going to Hollywood, but like, we won't see you. And it turns out that they end up needing a way to get to Hollywood like halfway through the movie, and Dr. Teeth shows up as the logistics person, right? So Dr. Teeth isn't what you would consider a regular leader. Dr. Teeth is kind of nut bar. He is the person in the band who makes the music. He is the person who loves to interact with people and be the life of the party. But Dr. Teeth has access to a group of people who have a van, and he shows up as a leader, bringing more people along with him, right? So as a leader, Dr. Teeth doesn't necessarily meet the definition. He's not out front. He's not, making momentous choices in a way that we think of as leaders, but Dr. Teeth is a leader as well. And then finally, we also have Mrs. Piggy. And Miss Piggy is a problematic female character, by the way. As an adult looking back on her, I really didn't identify with her as a kid. But now I see she's really that crisis communicator leader. She's the person that's going to solve the problem for you and make it work, right? So as a leader, she is decisive, she has a vision, she makes it happen, and she ends up saving the day quite a few times. So when we're thinking about these cast of characters that are coming in, it's really easy to look at these people in a crowd and be like, those aren't leaders, right? Because our expectation of leaders is that it's the person in the front of the room. It's Jean-Luc Picard, it's Barack Obama, it's Angela Merkel, it's the person in the position of authority. And when we're thinking about community building, we can't limit ourselves to that. So it might be a silly example to think about the Muppets trying to get to the place where they have the show, but that's the microcosm of community and developing a strong and beautiful community, because those people, the ones that aren't in the front of the room, the ones that are in the back of the room, the ones who show up to the PTA meeting and set out all of the food, the ones who are at the church potluck and they're cleaning up and they're putting the chairs away using acts of service as leadership. Those people are leaders, and they're the ones that we forget to pay attention to. So anytime we're thinking about change making, and when we're thinking about building community and starting from scratch, we have to have the person who's in the front, right? Like we have to have Kermit, we have to have a star of the show like Mrs. Piggy, but we also need the cheerleader. We need the logistics person. We need the crisis problem solver. We need our innovators like Bunsen and Beaker. We need all of those leaders who are kind of scaffolding up the vision, or we're not going to be able to succeed. Yes, on leading is teamwork. 2 out of 3, yes, absolutely. So what we're going to do, and this is, I think, Jeff, we talked about kind of doing some breakout rooms, and I think let's do that. Let's spend like 5 minutes in breakout rooms. I'm going to scooch these guys down here. So we've got Kermit the leader, who we've already talked about, right? But I want us to break out into rooms and think about the characteristics that these main kind of leadership areas, because they're not really types. I was like looking back at all my leadership curriculum that I've like thought through all this time. They're more like areas where people lead that we forget to look for them. And I want you in your breakout rooms to spend about 3 minutes problem solving with each other, click stickies on here, put images on here about what characteristics these types of leaders have, because those characteristics and those types of people are the ones that we have to find in your community so that you build that scaffolded structure so you can meet your goals and objectives. Okay. Who from fossee wants to talk about the type of communicator fossee is, and then kind of sum that up for us, and then think about like what jobs does that communicator, what jobs does that fossee do best?
I'll go ahead and break the ice here. So I think for any sort of, especially in change management or doing something innovative, finding that fossee is the most important step in the process. You mentioned that earlier. And so we put down that he's an early adopter, and he's the first person to really like pick up stuff and just run with it, versus it's like, kind of on the logistics end with Dr. Teeth and his band. They're kind of like, they like play along, but they're not totally bought in. So they're like kind of people leaders that you can give tasks to and go and execute on things, but they're not going to really like, if things start to turn for the innovation you're working on, they're the first group that'll kind of like, peace out a little bit on you, which they did a bunch of times in the Muppet movies.
That is true. They were also very concrete and literally following the script, which I never caught until last night.
And the one thing I did want to add for fossee, and I think this is a mistake that I commonly make. So in activities where I've been working on stuff, and maybe I'm the person that might have come up with the idea, I think I didn't have my fossee pivot to being a leader themselves quickly enough. That's like like when you're trying to, you always get challenged. Okay, how do you build scale on this idea so that there's other people that can recreate this? You have to make Fozzie, an independent operating leader to get your idea to scale.
Yes.
I think it's kind of like bringing that, right? Bringing your Fozzie first follower, cheerleader, that enthusiast, whoever's enthusiastic about the idea, who's then get that's infectious, right? That's contagious. That you bring. They're not just cheering the idea; they have to own the idea as much as you, right? So it's kind of like bringing them in, like Fozzie. If we take the Muppet literal example, like Fozzie contributes to what the show will be as much as he is cheering on and recruiting people to get involved. So Kermit takes Fozzie's ideas as well.
Fozzie does need more recognition. We were well, we'll get into that in a second.
Does your first follower have to have bad jokes?
Yes. I mean,
waka waka.
Yes. Waka waka. Okay. Any other thoughts on Fozzie? Like, what roles other than kind of like that cheerleader or influence is Fozzie going to excel at? And what roles is Fozzie not going to do well at, right?
I think Fozzie's that it's unapologetic. I wrote that on the note there, like it's unapologetically positive, unapologetically enthusiastic. Like there's nothing's going to get him down. And so he may not recognize problems for what they are, like, what Miss Piggy might recognize. Yeah. Or maybe he's not your detail, he's not going to cross every T.
Detailed person.
But that's okay.
Most likely. Like you've got some people who are cheerleaders and detailed people. I know I struggle in that role. I can't do both at the same time. Okay. Well, let's talk about Dr. Teeth. So Dr. Teeth is the leader of the band, the Electric Mayhem, which is fun. Who wants to talk a little bit about Dr. Teeth? So Justin went. Anastasia, do you want to take Dr. Teeth or someone else?
Sure, I'll take him.
Okay.
I just like him for his teeth. So Dr. Teeth is the logistics coordinator, and he is a doubting Thomas. He's not always sure that things are going to work. He'll kind of go along with it to see where we get to, but he's very detail oriented. He's extremely reliable. If he says he's going to be there, he'll be there. And in the movie, that's a prime example. He's good at asking questions, and he's a servant leader in that respect. Mm-hmm. He has a vision, and his goal is to reach that vision. And that's all the further he goes. He doesn't go above and beyond. He stops at reaching that goal. So in a way, he's a servant leader, but he's also a follower.
Yes. And I think the other thing that's interesting is you notice like Dr. Teeth in the movie, Dr. Teeth doesn't actually own a van, but Dr. Teeth found someone that owned a van. So I think that is an important thing to think about when we're thinking about the person who has the skills for logistics. So these are the people who you want helping you with event management. These are the people that you want helping you kind of organize your general meetings or making sure that people have all of the tools they need to get into the room. So this is the person that, like I said, shows up at the bake sale with all of the cupcakes, right? So I think that it's important to know that this person isn't the person who's going to bake the cupcakes. They're not necessarily the person that's going to pick up all those chairs after a meeting, right? But they are a person who likes to get people in there to do those types of things, right?
Resourceful networker.
Dr. Teeth is definitely a delegator.
Definitely a delegator and a networker, right?
Right.
So when we're thinking about finding this person, the Fozzies of the world are usually easy to recognize. They tend to be the person who is coming in authentic. They're the early adopter. They're cheerleading. The way you think about these logistic leaders is they're the person who helps coordinate. They're the person who is asking for help. They're the person who says, hey, I'm doing X, can you do Y? That's that Dr. Teeth kind of leader.
And within community, but also my brain also thinks about the cultivators that are in our community. And even if you have an idea at your workplace, taking it back to that even, and I think about like the people you want to surround yourself with to make your idea happen, that's your community around your idea. And the logistics person, I almost think of it as like a project manager, right? This is a person who, if you're like me and your big picture, you need that detail-oriented person to cross your T's and dot your I's, because you're not doing that. So they're trustworthy. And I think that person usually doesn't live in, even though Dr. Teeth is in the band, but that person usually isn't in the spotlight as much, right? And they don't get, I think, the recognition. Somebody had said something, they deserve to be recognized and whatnot. But you're right, like they really do, but they often don't. It's the stage, it's the crew for a play, right? It's the stage manager.
Yeah, exactly. So let's do the next two a little faster, because the last exercise that I want us to do is to try to extend this into your current community and the work that you're doing right now. So Miss Piggy, right? We of course want this person to be calm, patient, but to be a good crisis person in a crisis, you just have to fix the problem, right? That's why we excuse a lot of bad behaviors in our crisis leaders throughout history. We want to solve them, then to solve the problem, we wanted to do it effectively and in the best way possible. So this is the person that's a good problem solver. This is the person that's decisive, that can make those decisions. They're courageous, they're dynamic. And of course, we would like them to also be calm and vigilant and listen to people and do all of that, but we might not be able to have that happen. So from there, we have our innovators. So how this is the person who kind of like just solves the problem and just chucks on through. It is a very good person to have in your leadership circle. And how you're going to find them is they probably are just solving problems. Everybody else is off talking about something, and the person who is this type of communicator or leader is just going to do it.
Can I ask real quick? Somebody put inconsistent and messy, and I'm thinking they meant that in a positive way, right? But I would love to hear elaboration on that.
Oh, on the innovators.
Yeah.
Sorry about my pupper, y'all. She's not feeling very good.
Whoever
that was
put
Todor. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Todor?
So normally people who are more innovative. So basically they're not focusing on keeping things tight and clean. So they could be a little bit messy, or sometimes they could feel all over the place. And inconsistent, they're losing patience, so they can easily get bored by things. So they like variety, but they can be extremely productive.
Yeah,
Throwing
I think
out
about this as like kind of like
in terms of ideas. Yeah,
they work in waves,
it is.
right?
Yeah.
So like they'll have moments of like they're just gathering. I think about this as like the spider in the middle of the web. They're just gathering all their information and then they just move.
Yeah.
Oh, you can give them power. So like you can empower them, Han. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
It's about, am I open?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you can give them responsibility. So you have it's this hierarchy in organizations. You can give them mandate. I think that's the way you say it. You're allowed to make decisions, and then the team should follow him or to follow him, and otherwise,
yeah,
you get stuck, right?
Yeah, we're gonna build a dike. Everybody carries sand now because there's water flowing.
Yeah. And the way you see those innovators is they're probably actually the quietest person in the room. So that's the other thing I want us to think about when we're identifying our leaders is it's not only just people that aren't in the front, it might be the person that you're not even seeing. So I'm going to put us into private mode, but take your sticky and write in here.
I have a sticky and I can try.
Drop a sticky there and think about your community. And think about your leaders who are in your community and what they're doing already, right?
So we're thinking about our workplace communities.
Communities, put their names on there. identify the type of leader they are and how you think about them and what skills they have.
I'll say the other thing it made me think we were talking about the characteristics of each of the leaders and whatnot. It kind of reinforces for me that in my role, even as community manager for the Cultivators community, my role isn't to do all the things, it's to create an environment so that all of those people can do their thing, right? So I think, and somebody had mentioned, I think it was Han, talking about like, you've got to give those people permission. You've got to allow them to be and do what they want to do. It's like those innovators. It's okay to be messy. It's okay to be chaotic, because that's what an innovator needs. So you have to create that environment that allows them to be that way.
So the other way to think about this is, what are you? Oh, beautiful. What is your leadership style? Because if you know what your leadership style is, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to find people who are different types of leaders from you. So most people think that I'm a Kermit leader. I am not a Kermit leader. I am a fossee leader. And I love being a fossee leader. Don't try to make me a Kermit leader, because it'll make me really, really sad, right? Because it just doesn't work. So let's do one more round of voting. And I want you to kind of pick, of all of these leaders, who you are. I'm going to give everybody one vote. No worries.
Okay,
right.
there we have now.
There we go.
Ooh, super interesting.
Votes. Huh?
Somebody voted on the sleepy cat. We've got some Dr. Teeth. We've got some Bunsen and Beakers. We've got some Fozzie. And we've got one Kermit. Kermit has a dream. Fascinating. So when you identify that, here, I'm going to end our session. When you identify that and you know that about yourself, what you then need to do is start looking around your community and finding the other people who are going to help you, because we can't be all things, right? Like, we can't be a leader of all things. Well, so I'm going to give you my final thought. If you haven't watched this movie since you were a kid, or you've never watched this movie, it's called the Muppet Movie. And that is a picture of Sweetums. And who Sweetums is you meet Sweetums early on. Sweetums is this huge monster who works at a car yard, helps solve a couple problems. And the group is like, hey, Sweetums, we're going to Hollywood. You want to come? And Sweetums just runs off screaming. But it turned out Sweetums really, really wanted to come and just couldn't get in on the bus fast enough. So when we have a strong, stable leadership structure where we're not, as leaders, trying to be all things to every people, and we're identifying the other leaders that we need involved. Yeah, you can absolutely both. I was forcing you to pick one for pretend, but so you can be involved. What you're going to do is you're going to create a community that is strong and vibrant, and you're going to have people like Sweetums who are busting down the doors to be a part of it. And the end of the movie is Sweetums comes, they like get to Hollywood, they have their movie, they watch it on screen, and Sweetums busts through the screen and is like, I'm here, basically. I want to be involved. And yeah, his name is Sweetums. It's amazing. He is my favorite Muppet of all time. Him and the bear from Muppets in Space. So anyways, that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to build that experience, and we're trying to identify these leaders. And we just need to remember that we're not going to look at the front of the room. The leaders that you need are probably already in your community. They're probably already taking these actions, and they're probably all around you.
For feedback, we'll continue this entire conversation throughout the week in the Cultivators community. Some feedback, I'm launching a poll in Zoom. It's one question, should be simple enough to answer. How likely you are to recommend this type of event to a friend. We will, like I said, in Slack, if you're not a member of the Cultivators community, I know we have a few people who are not in the community, and that's okay. I'll follow up with you. I'm not going to post a link here. I'll follow up with you with an email later today. Also give you, like Amanda said, an opportunity to give some qualitative feedback as well. And then I'll also do one last shameless self-promotion for next week's event. I hope you're all free to join us next week. Same day, same time, Tuesday, 10 a.m. Eastern. The topic will be badges, incentives, rewards, and other ways to inspire internal champions in your community. You can RSVP to that event right away. I posted the link in chat. And with that, with 2 minutes to spare, unless anybody has any final thoughts, I want to thank everybody for coming. And
Yeah, thank you so much for coming, y'all.
never stop changing.